Hello, my name is Bob Tribe, and welcome to Valley to Vietnam. Valley to Vietnam is a joint effort between the Sacramento Public Library and the Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 500. It is our intent to trace the arc of experience between Sacramento and Vietnam for our local Vietnam-era vets. Today, our guest is Bill McCauley, who served in the Army for 4 years with a tour in Vietnam during that time. So, Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
Bill, I know your family has this unique history, and that is that you have a long family history of Army service.
Yes, we do. All the way back to the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
We've had relatives in every war since the Revolutionary War.
Oh my gosh.
All the way up to Vietnam, and it ended there. My sons never went into the military, at my advice.
Yeah, that's pretty exceptional. I doubt that there's a lot of people that have that history of service. So that's pretty interesting. Your father's military service then was what?
My father was ended his military service as a lieutenant colonel. He went into the military in 1923 after graduating from the University of California, Berkeley. And then retired from the military in 1948 as lieutenant colonel.
Okay, and he served in World War II?
World War II.
Okay. You were born in Carmel, and I assume that that's probably because it's close to an old Army fort.
Fort Ord.
Yeah.
My father was stationed in Fort Ord, and we lived in Carmel while he was in the war, Second World War.
Okay.
And when he came home and retired, and then went into military service at the Veterans Administration Hospital construction.
Ah, okay. At some point you moved to San Francisco.
Yeah, in 1949 we moved to San Francisco just for a brief time, and my father then went to work for the Veterans Administration, and we moved almost every year until I was in college.
But you came back to San Francisco.
We came back to San Francisco. We came back to San Francisco when my mother and I stayed in San Francisco during my 5th and 6th years in grammar school.
Okay.
And then after that, we continued to travel all the way through high school.
And your mother's family was from San Francisco, right?
No, my mother's family is from Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Evansville, Indiana, but she met my father after she moved to San Francisco. Her first husband had died, and she and her 4 children moved to San Francisco. Met my father at a party, and
he swept her off her feet.
Swept her off her feet.
Wow. Now primarily you went to San Francisco schools.
I did. Most of my schools were in San Francisco. I went to mission school in Carmel, where we spent the first 8 years of my life.
Uh-huh.
And then in San Francisco, off and on, from grammar school, high school, and college at the University of San Francisco.
So St. Paul's, Reardon High School,
and
University of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Very Catholic.
Very Catholic.
Were you raised Catholic then?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My mother was a staunch Catholic.
Okay.
My father was not, but my mother...
Same as my family.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this. You mentioned your dad, after he left the Army in 1948, he did this construction of what, military hospitals primarily?
Yeah, military neuropsychiatric VA hospitals.
Okay.
And some remodeled, some brand new.
So he supervised the renovation of those?
He was a superintendent of construction working for the Veterans Administration. What his job was to make sure that the civilian contractors followed government specifications, everything from foundations to the x-ray machines. He covered everything. Lived on the site. We lived on the sites of the hospitals.
Okay. And you had how many siblings? Four siblings, but they were all much older than I, and the product of my mother's first marriage. Oh, okay.
So I was a baby of the family.
Yeah.
We started to move while they were, from the time I was about 9 years old, I was like an only child.
Okay, so they were grown and gone by the time
you were grown and gone.
Wow. So you attend USF, and you went into ROTC.
Right.
And that was expected of you, I assume.
Absolutely, that was the thing. You were at high school, college, and then in the military. So I went in the ROTC. I had received. I could have gone to the military academy at West Point.
Uh-huh.
I had an appointment there, and about my sophomore year at USF, I went to my counselor and said I would like to go to military academy. And Father Smythe he said, well, he said, if you did, you'd have to start over again as a freshman at the military academy. But if you keep up your grades and your ROTC, you could become a distinguished military graduate and receive a regular Army commission rather than a reserve commission.
Is that something like top 5 or 10% or?
Yeah, top 2% of your military class.
Wow, that's like a SUMA graduate out of college
Yeah,
then.
yeah. So I did and I did. I stayed and I became a military graduate.
And while you were going to USF, you worked a variety of little jobs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Basically, almost the whole time I worked at a hospital, at St. Joseph's Hospital in San Francisco, installing television sets.
Right.
In those days, there wasn't a television set in every room. You ordered a television set, and I would pick up the television set in the basement of the hospital, take it up the elevator, climb up on a ladder, hook it on the wall, fill out a form for them to rental, and show them how to use a television set. That's what I did for 4 years.
I remember St. Joseph's. It was right by Buena Vista Park, and
Right.
I was going with a woman then who worked the reception desk there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we used to come over to that hospital.
Yeah. It's a
Plus-
condominium now.
Plus, my cousin was a year younger than me, and she was going to USF part of the same time you were there, and I'd go over and see her all the time. So we probably crossed paths maybe at
Probably
some
walked by each
point.
other.
Yeah. So now, in graduating as a distinguished graduate and giving an RA commission, that gives you a certain obligation then?
It was a 20-year obligation.
Wow, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, just like a West Point commission, you're expected.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not an absolute requirement,
right.
but you're expected to stay in the military for those 20 years because they've trained you quite extensively.
And you, basically, there's probably a lesser number of years that you absolutely have to serve, maybe 4 or 5 or something like
3
that.
years.
Okay.
At that point, they told me that after 3 years, because you can choose your first assignment, and I chose Europe because I just got married out of college, and I didn't want to go to Korea where the reserve officers were going. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons. That was another motivation to get a regular commission so I could pick my first assignment. When they said, well, you spend 3 years in Europe, then you can resign your commission and get out.
Right. Now, so the year you graduate, 1963, from USF, you also get married.
Right,
And your wife was from Sacramento?
right,
So she's got some family history here.
absolutely.
And you were married in Sacramento.
Right. St. Francis Church.
Oh, yeah. Not far from where we live.
Yeah.
Or from your studio. And I'm very proud to say that you've been married 51 years now.
51 years.
Wow. Good job. And how many kids do you have?
6.
Wow.
11 grandchildren.
Nice.
1 great-grandchild.
Nice job. So in '63, really, Vietnam is pretty much at a low tide.
It's mostly advisors.
Yeah, mostly special forces
Yeah,
advisors
yeah.
and maybe some civilians or whatever, or alleged civilians. So you are sent to Germany.
Right.
And where in Germany?
Mannheim, Germany.
Okay. And what were you doing there?
I started out as a rifle platoon leader, and then I had a mortar platoon, and then I was given a staff job as the battalion intelligence officer. And then I had another platoon, which was called the Davy Crockett platoon.
Oh, yeah.
Which was
I remember
nuclear
this.
weapons at the battalion level,
Right.
which was quite interesting.
And basically, the U.S. Army then was waiting for the Russians to make their push
Right.
to the west, and
Right.
you were supposed to stop them.
Through the Fulda Gap.
Oh, the Fulda Gap. That's a famous pass
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I used to joke at the time. My father went to Europe to protect the Russians from the Germans. I went to Europe to protect the Germans from the Russians.
That's the way the world
Yeah,
turns.
that's the way the world goes.
Now, were you assigned to a particular division then, like the 2nd Infantry or someone
In
like
Germany?
that? Yeah,
2nd Battalion, 13th Infantry, 8th
Okay.
Division, 8th Division.
8th, right. Okay. And you had 2 sons born in Germany?
2 sons born in Heidelberg, Germany, at the Heidelberg Hospital.
Oh, nice. You return from Germany and you do a brief stint at Fort Polk, Louisiana. What did you do there?
At Fort Polk, Louisiana, I was the OIC, the officer in charge of the automatic weapons department.
Oh, okay.
Just for a brief period of time before we went to Fort Benning.
So that was all automatic weapons training then,
Right.
with M60s and
M16s, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the most god-awful posts in the Army. It was infamous,
It was.
Fort Polk, just because of the weather. And then you go to Fort Benning, and what were you doing at Benning?
At Fort Benning, we formed the 199th
Georgia.
Light Infantry Brigade.
Right. And that's Fort Benning, Georgia.
Right.
We just assume everybody knows where all these forts are, or I do. Okay, so you formed that brigade, and so what function did you have with them at that point?
At that time, I was in fact, the whole time was the assistant S4
Supply.
supply.
Okay.
Supply and logistics.
Okay. So then it's decided that the 199th will go to Vietnam.
Right.
And unlike later in the war when they'd be shipping everybody by airplane, you guys went by ship.
We had 3,000 men in the brigade.
Right.
It was a light infantry brigade, had helicopter companies, aviation companies, scout dogs, artillery. It's like a small division. And it was called the Light Brigade, like the charge of the Light Brigade.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so we moved everybody to Oakland,
Okay.
put them on 2 ships, and off we went to Vietnam.
Wow. 2 ships took all 3,000.
Right.
Yeah. And it took how long to get over there?
About a month,
Yeah.
because we had some trouble at sea, and we had to stop at Okinawa. So it took us about a month to get
What
there.
kind of trouble?
Well, we had someone jump off the ship and commit suicide.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to go back and look. Then our radar went out, so we had to stop at Okinawa, and then we had to fill out a lot of forms because of his suicide. So
Yeah.
it took us about a month to get there.
You're now a captain
Right.
at this point, and you're still assigned as the assistant S4 for the
S4.
brigade,
Mm-hmm.
and you're stationed at Long Binh.
Long bed.
Okay. And so your function then, primary functions in Vietnam then were what?
Resupply.
Yeah.
Resupply of ammunition. We had a general that really wanted a lot of special things for the brigade, and he would ask me to get these special things. Like my favorite was called the Transphibian Crusher. It was this huge machine that could go through the jungle and just wipe out the jungle completely, just like a gigantic tractor,
Making lots of noise.
making lots of noise and
Not a good thing.
messing up the jungle.
Yeah. And so was the brigade kind of scattered then in 3 corps, or?
Yeah, we were mostly in what's called the Rung Sat Special Zone, all around Saigon.
Okay.
And our job was to stop resupply coming through Cambodia and whatever way they came down.
I see.
Our job was primarily ambush,
Yeah.
to stop the resupplies at night, so we were mainly ambush.
So you had a lot of different sites that you were resupplying to?
Yeah, a lot of different sites, because we were spread all over.
And you were resupplying by helicopter or what?
Helicopter, by boat on the Saigon River, and C-130 aircraft.
Uh-huh.
We
Okay.
devised a way to fly in C-130 aircraft very low and drop off big pallets into the rice paddy dikes, rice paddies, like big sleds, and they would just skip along the mud and land where the troops were.
You were telling me that initially you were losing more troops to drowning than being shot.
We were, because during the monsoon season, suddenly a small little rivulet would become a raging torrent, and there was a lot of soldiers who, from the Midwest, who didn't know how to swim.
Yeah.
Plus, it's difficult to swim when you've got a steel helmet and a flak jacket and a rifle and combat boots on. So
And all that ammo.
we had to get a lot. That was one of my missions too, was to begin supplying more boats. So I had to get a lot of boats for our brigade.
You returned from Vietnam in July of 1966,
Correct.
and you resigned your commission.
Right.
And that was primarily because after this long family history of being in the Army
Yeah,
until you...
I decided that I didn't want to be involved in any more wars. I didn't want to have to go back to Vietnam. When I went, I had 3 children.
Uh-huh.
My oldest daughter was born the day before I left, 1 month premature, and she popped out. I delivered her.
Oh,
She
wow.
popped out the night before I left, and I delivered my daughter.
Wow. But also, you'd mentioned to me that you just didn't see yourself as that kind of life. You'd spent your youth
Right.
moving all over the place.
Right, I didn't want to move anymore, and I didn't particularly want to be involved in an organization like the Army.
Yeah. Okay. So post-Vietnam, initially, you managed your father-in-law's car wash,
Car wash,
here in Sacramento,
right on 19th and L.
which is now Harvey's,
It was
I think.
Harvey's. It was Andy's then.
Was
My
Andy's,
father
yeah.
owned Andy's Car Wash.
So you did that for like 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. And then you mentioned you lived in Arden Oaks out in the north area
Mhm.
here, and you had a neighbor who did landscape architecture and...
Yeah, my across the street neighbor had been the state landscape architect, and he was semi-retired, and my father-in-law sold the car wash, and I was basically out of work.
Yeah.
So the man across the street asked me if I would like to help him with the landscape next door to my house.
Right.
And I did, and he said, well, you know, if you want to get into this business, it's a good business, a landscape construction business. So I said, that sounds like a good idea. So I went back to college and got a degree in horticulture.
Okay.
Because I figured if I was going to be a landscape contractor, I needed to know about plants. I went
Sure.
back to American River College and got another degree.
I might ask some advice from you on that. That'll be later. Let's see, so then eventually you're doing this horticulture and landscaping, and then you become a general contractor.
We moved to Marin County in 1980.
Okay.
And at that time, we were doing a large landscape on Belvedere Island in Marin County. And the owner of the home that we were working on said he wanted to build another home on his property, and asked if we want to do it. I said, well, we're landscape contractors, but we built a few decks and pool houses, but nothing like this, because it's all going to be cantilevered out into space looking out at the ocean.
It's a big jump.
Big job, big job. So he said, come on, we can do it. So we did. He went to Los Angeles, and we built the house.
Oh, wow. Was he satisfied?
He was very satisfied,
good.
because we did a lot of work for him after that.
The deck didn't collapse or anything?
Nothing
No.
collapsed.
Good job.
Driveway was suspended out in space, and so was the house.
So then you became a general contractor.
We became general contractors. I had my oldest son get the contractor's license, because I figured my two sons were going to be in the business longer than I, so we named it McCauley's and Father Construction Company.
Now, are they still in?
They're still very, very successful in Marin County.
Great. Then you make this eventual shift into yoga. I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, in about 1995, we started doing yoga, Bikram type hot yoga in San Francisco. And one day there was a sign on the wall at the studio that they were going to give their very first teachers training. This type of yoga had been in the States since 1974 when Bikram Chaudhuri brought it to the United States. And my wife said, I think I'd like to do that, because we really enjoy doing yoga. And we've been doing yoga for years. So before that, our kids had to do yoga before they could have breakfast. And so she went off. I paid for her to go off to school in Beverly Hills, is where the training was, where the main studio was. And she came back, and I really enjoyed doing yoga. And then I started teaching at the school, and then and part-time doing the construction. And then one day I severed my thumb with a saw, and I figured this must be the sign for me to get out of the construction business. And the studio became very, very successful. So my sons, I gave the construction company to my sons, and went into the yoga business full-time. Okay.
And eventually you moved back to Sacramento.
Yeah, in 2000 we came back to Sacramento, because my wife's mother, we were spending a lot of time helping her here in Sacramento, because her father had passed away. And so we came here to Sacramento, and the Sakopoulos family found out that we wanted to come here, and Yeleni Sakopoulos said, how much money do you need to open a studio in Sacramento?
Oh.
And my wife told her, I can do that. So she loaned us the money to open the studio, and it became very successful overnight.
And this studio is located next to One Speed on Folsom Boulevard.
48th and Folsom, next to One Speed.
Yeah, it's
restaurant.
Famous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
We've
great
been there
place.
for almost 15 years now.
I've got several good friends who go there, and they look pretty fit, you know. That's good for you. And I have to say, you look exceptionally fit. I mean, here you are, 72 years old, you're 6'2", you weigh 171 pounds. How many 72-year-olds would meet that criteria? Very few, let me tell you. I'd just like to say thank you for your service, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. This concludes our time on Valley to Vietnam. I'd like to thank Bill once again for coming in today, and say welcome home to him and to all the vets. For Valley to Vietnam, producer Jerry Ward, director James Scott, I'm Bob Tribe saying farewell, and I look forward to joining you for a future episode of Valley to Vietnam. Thanks.